What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're looking at some FPL mistakes to avoid, right? So this could be maybe for your game week 1 squad, but more so it's going to be throughout the season. Some things to think about when you're playing, especially if you've maybe not taken it seriously before, if you're new to the game and stuff like that. Perhaps you're a veteran of the game, but you just want a few more pointers or a bit of a refresh as well. Make sure you watch the whole thing. I'll also be doing an FPL tips video later on this week to just talk about some general tips as well to help you throughout this season, which will be different to the stuff that you see in this one. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and hit the like button if you enjoy it or if you find it useful. And just before we jump into the video, I have partnered with Fantasy Football Scout. So one thing to avoid is not having an FPL site that's got loads of great tools to use throughout the FPL season. There's a link in the description below if you want to sign up. At the time of recording, they've still got their 20% off in the pre-season offer on, so you can sign up monthly or you can sign up for the whole year and just get the payment done in one go. And there's loads of great tools on here. So for example, I've probably shown quite a few of these already, but you can use the comparison tool. So if there's two players you're really looking at around the same price, it could be like Son and Mahrez, for example, then you can just put their names in. We'll just do Son and Mahrez for ease. Now I've said that, and Son's probably going to be, yeah, this should be Son here. So this is for last season. You can do all matches. You can select like certain game weeks and stuff. So when you're throughout the season, you might want to change that up a little bit, and you can just compare the two and see how they stack up. It will give you a bunch of stats. If I just make it smaller, you can see that a bunch of stats there. There's comparison tool. You can get all the team stats you need: expected data, shots in the box, chances created, blocks, tackles, saves, whatever it might be. There is so much stuff available within the members area, so give it a go. Make sure you sign up, link in the description below, and like I said, make avail of the 20% offer before it stops. So for any of you that watch my FPL and psychology, like FPL showcase video with Ross, some of this will have been covered. We had a bit of a chat about it, but I just want to talk about it again because there might have been some points I missed, and I already, to be honest, set this video up anyway, right, before we even did that discussion. So it was interesting to see how much of a crossover there was before what I was already planning, and obviously what he brought to the table as well. So one of them is having set rules, right? And I don't think it's necessarily a mistake in itself to have a set of maybe criteria or even rules, if you want to call them that, about what you're going to try and do this season. But you have to be flexible. You've got to be adaptable, in so that if something happens, like if a player that you've kind of ruled out or is from a new club and you never buy players from new clubs or whatever it might be, suddenly starts to become an option for our FPL teams, then you should be flexible and adaptable enough to change that, right? It's great having a set of rules, but each different season is the same. And things change so quickly in FPL, right? From a week-to-week basis, game to game, even month to month, whatever it might be. So for example, last year, I would say, do not use your wild card too early, right? Definitely don't use it in game week 18-19 where you've only just used the first one. So I'm talking about the second wild card, and I used it in like game week 18 just after it was available for use, and that meant I didn't have it for the rest of the season. Now usually I'd probably write a rule saying not to do that, but the circumstances for last season meant that it was a good idea to use it there, or at least I thought it was, and it turned out to be. This season, I'll probably look to keep it a little bit longer, like I usually do, just keep it in the back pocket, ready for when I need it, ready for when there's double game weeks or whatever it might be. But if it happens to be that it's a better option to use it earlier, then I'll just be flexible, be adaptable, and just not listen to that rule that's kind of ingrained in my head as well. And also, not everything's black and white. So some people have rules where you have to use the eye test. You have to only use stats. You should always go with form. You should always go with fixtures. You can have a little bit of everything. And depending on the decision you're making, it might be worth going for form. It might be worth going for fixtures or whatever it might be. So it's good to have a set of rules, but you don't want to stick to them rigidly, in my opinion. So as always in these videos, right, I'm trying to talk about things that are going to help you hopefully get a higher rank or just do better, maybe beat your mid-league rivals and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with having like a team bias or a player bias, right? So sometimes you'll see like Everton fans will just not buy Liverpool players, or Liverpool fans will just not buy Everton players, and that's perfectly fine, right? This game is supposed to be fun. We need to try and remember that, and if that's how you want to play the game, then fine. But if you're specifically looking to try and improve your rank and improve how you're going to do this season, then you shouldn't really do that, right? You don't want to take certain players or certain teams out of the equation, especially if it's Liverpool, because we're most of the season going to want like 2 or 3 Liverpool players like Salah, Trent Alexander-Arnold, etc. And this also comes down to being hurt before, right? So Callum Wilson is a great example. There's plenty of times in the past, previous seasons, where people, FPL managers have bought him, and he just hasn't returned when you wanted him to, and then he maybe has when you've sold him. And everyone's got that player in the back of their mind where they're thinking, I'm never buying him again. But that is not the right way to think. You should always be open-minded in terms of the players that you might want to buy this season. Callum Wilson, he's on penalties, his underlying stats are pretty good. If he's fit to start the season, the fixtures aren't bad for Newcastle, you shouldn't completely rule him out. That doesn't mean you have to buy him. Of course, you might think that Watkins is better, Antonio, Calvert-Lewin, Cavani, whoever it is, right? There might be better options, but don't completely rule a player out before you've even had a chance to look at them, or even let themselves redeem themselves, right? So this one's simple, right? You just stop playing. Maybe you've not taken it seriously. You're one of those people, and I talk to them all the time, when they ask me what I do, and I say I make FPL content, oh yeah, I play that, but after a few weeks I just give it up, and that's fine, right? If you're not having fun, then do that, but just because you have a bad start shouldn't mean that you stop playing. There's loads of content out there, right? Hopefully you're enjoying my videos, hopefully you've hit subscribe and the like button, etc. There's loads of other FPL YouTubers out there, there's loads of people making podcasts, writing articles, writing Twitter threads, maybe posting content on Instagram, wherever it might be. There's enough there so that you don't necessarily have to put in hours and hours of work, and maybe you just do your team at whatever time on a Friday night or a Saturday morning and just be done with it, right? There's plenty of points to be had as well. So even if you do have a bad start, the first 4 to 6 game weeks are just not good, there's plenty of time to make that up, still get a good rank, still beat your friends, still beat your colleagues, or whatever it might be. And remember, it's supposed to be fun as well. So if you are finding that you're stopping playing because it's not fun, think about why you're not finding it fun. Some people just don't like it. That's absolutely fine. But if it's because you're putting too much time in or not enough time, maybe just look to address that. Don't stop playing. Give it a chance at least. So there is a time and a place to be reactive, right? Sometimes, especially at the start of the season in particular, there is a player that maybe we thought just wasn't a good option, and then they're playing in a different position. Maybe they're more advanced, maybe they're more influential in the game, so they're more likely to get you FPL points. That happens, and it's okay to be reactive. But if you're playing the game without a plan at all, so you're not planning captaincy, you're not potentially planning future transfers because you've spotted a fixture turn either for good or for bad, right? So some player you already own might be about to come into a set of bad fixtures, a player you might want to bring in is about to come into a set of good fixtures, etc. If you're not planning that, then you're constantly reacting, and that can sway your decisions quite a lot. So you're basically just basing it on who's just scored points, and as a general rule, that's not the best way to play FPL. You want to try and predict who's about to score points. Easier said than done. Doesn't always work, right? We all know that if you've played it for a while, but you don't want to be too reactive, and that can also mean that you start taking hits. Now, I don't want to get into a massive discussion about whether hits are good or bad, because I think they can be both. I think it depends on the individual circumstances for the transfers you're making, but by being reactive, you are more likely to take hits, and they do end up costing you points over the season. And again, they can be good, but most of the time you want to have planned it or be into a really tricky situation where maybe you need to restructure for a captain, or maybe you've got a suspension or an injury or something like that. It's something that's out of your hands. And also, a lot of people are reactive because they forget their prior beliefs. So you'll have put loads of planning into getting a player, right, or thinking about buying a player in a few weeks because they've had X amount of shots, or their expected goals, they're like 3rd or 4th in the whole league, or whatever it might be. Then all of a sudden a different player scores a goal the week before you're going to transfer the other one in, and you just forget everything you researched, and that's just being reactionary. So keep faith in what you've researched, whether it's eye test, stats, or whatever it is, and make sure you've got a plan in place. So you'll know if you've watched my channel for a while, this is definitely a bugbear of mine. So a differential is someone that's not very highly owned, right, by everyone else. So right now, you could say that Sancho's a bit of a differential. He's only around 10% ownership, whereas Bruno Fernandes for Man United is like over 40%. But you have to pick the right moment. There will be times throughout the season where you've spotted a player, or you've got a spare transfer to bring them in, and they're just not very highly owned. Maybe people just are a bit risk adverse because of the amount of minutes, and you think that player will get loads of game time, etc., and you're willing to take that risk. That's a great time to do it. But if you're just being different for the sake of it, or just because, as I've written on screen, I don't think that works too well. And again, it's all about fun. So if you're an FPL manager that wants to take a punt every week, you want to do something a little bit different, that's absolutely fine. I'm specifically talking about those that are looking to maybe not guarantee a higher rank, but give them the best chance of doing that, right? And I don't think being different for the sake of it is the way to do it. And obviously, just think to yourself, are they genuinely a good pick, or is it just the ownership that you're looking at, right? If you haven't got a good reason, like if I ask you why you're buying that player and you haven't got a good reason apart from, well, they're just a differential, they could do well, they might do well, whatever it might be, they're probably not a good pick, and you probably shouldn't get them even if they are low owned. Oh, come on, I had to do it, right? What is a mistake for this season? Not being subscribed to the channel. It's just too easy, setting myself up, and I'm batting it out of the park, right? If you're not already subscribed, please do help me get to 200,000 subscribers by game week 1. I'd love to get to 250,000 by the end of the season. If you've been watching my videos, right, you've clicked on this one. Hopefully at this point you're still enjoying it, right? You've enjoyed it so far. You're about to enjoy the rest of it. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, it takes 2 seconds. It's completely free and it really helps me out. So go and hit it now. So there are nuances to this, right? And I did say about having a set of rules. You shouldn't really have one. So I don't think the rule should be never ever make an early transfer, but you need to be 100% sure that is the transfer you want to make. And if it's just because you've had a bad game week or a player's going up in price, I really would try and sleep on it, and then the next day you might look to make a better decision. Maybe you'll think, well, I don't actually want them that much, it's something else that's influencing me that shouldn't be. So you need to be 100% sure, and preferably if you're doing it early on in the season where you're trying to chase price rises, make sure you've got a backup player. So if I bring in X player, right, because they're going up in price, but then they've got a game later on that week they could get injured in, have I got another player that I can play instead, or am I then going to have to make another transfer to take them out? So you want to have a backup. And I would say, again, set rule maybe, you probably shouldn't have them, but as the season goes on I would reduce the amount of early transfers I'm making, because price rises don't become less important, but they don't happen as often generally unless a player out of the blue is suddenly scoring loads and loads of goals, and so it's mostly better to wait until you've got all the information you can get, and that basically means waiting until the press conferences, because sometimes you will have a press conference, there's a player that hasn't been injured, it's not been reported in the news, and all of a sudden a manager tells you that they're a doubt for the weekend, and that can throw off all your transfer plans that you've maybe made. So I'm not saying never do this, but be 100% sure and try not to do it if you can help it. So this is similar to the last one about not making early transfers, but this is more about thinking about why you're making a transfer. So raise transfers when you've either bought in a player and it hasn't gone right, or maybe you've owned someone, they were in a really easy fixture, maybe you've gone for a different captain that someone else hasn't gone for, and they've had like 3 golden opportunities to score and they just haven't scored. Like, it's just one of those days, and a lot of people will raise, you'll be like, right, I'm getting rid of that player, I've got to get rid of him, okay, who do I need to go and get instead, who's going up in price, etc. Boom, I make that transfer on the weekend. I would really try and not make transfers on the weekend, even if you don't wait until Friday, Saturday, that's fine. Just don't make them the day when you've watched matches, right? Again, having a sleep on it definitely helps. And put FPL away if you need to, right? If you're having a bad time with it, just close the app, put your phone down, go and do something else. Ross said on the video we did about going for a walk, etc. And definitely come off social media. This all depends on how you react to stuff. I find it not easy, but if I've had a bad game week or my player hasn't done well, I don't mind logging onto Twitter, maybe making a bit of a joke of it myself, and looking at everyone else like kind of celebrating success. But if you find it difficult to do that, if that's going to affect you in a negative way, you've got to get off social media more often when it comes to FPL. Again, it's supposed to be an enjoyable game, and if you're going to raise transfer every time a player doesn't do well, it's not going to be a good start. So put the phone away on the weekend and at least wait until kind of Monday, Tuesday to make your transfers. So this is quite a big one, and to be honest, it probably should have been a little bit further up the list, but this is judging the outcome, right? So this is when you bring a player in, you've done loads of research about why this is a great player to bring in, and on the weekend or over the next kind of 2, 3, 4 game weeks, they just don't perform, and then you look back and you think, well, that was a really bad decision, right? But what you're judging there is the outcome. Once a player steps on the pitch, there's nothing we can do about it. Sometimes they just won't perform well, even though they're a great player, right? Take Bruno Fernandes. He was the highest scoring player. How can I not remember if he was the highest scoring player? I'm pretty sure he was, but there was a period at the end of the season where he just didn't really do too much at all. That's just one of those things. Sometimes players score a big concentration of points, we get them in, and then they stop doing that for whatever reason it might be. So you need to think about the reasons you made that decision in the first place. So if you are someone that always uses the eye test, so you've made 2 great decisions earlier on in the season because your eye test has, recognised the players good, you've brought them in, they've done well, and then for a third player you do the same thing, you've watched enough minutes, you've watched enough matches, you've seen how involved they are, and you want to bring them in as well. If that player doesn't perform, it wasn't a bad decision. It just so happens that for whatever reason, the eye test didn't work that time, right? Your eye test worked for 2, but not for 1. So there's no problem with what you're doing. Just sometimes the player just doesn't do well, right? And also, was it lucky or unlucky? Because sometimes you watch a game, a player comes away with 2 or 3 returns, and you're thinking, how has that happened, right? You've just got a bit unlucky that you didn't bring that player in, or whatever it might have been. Maybe a ball was kicked into them, it went in the goal, so they've scored a goal, but they've not really scored it, it's just rebounded off them, right? Stuff like that happens. And obviously, have things changed, right? When you made that decision originally, should anything have made you change that decision before you made it, right? So, for example, if you thought about bringing in a player on Monday, was there stuff that happened kind of Tuesday to Thursday before you made the transfer that you just didn't take notice of? And if there wasn't, then chances are you've probably made a good decision. It was just a bad outcome, and that's going to happen in FPL. So there we go. There's some FPL mistakes to try and avoid. Let me know what you think about them. Again, some of them you might disagree with. Leave me a comment below and let me know if there's any I've missed that you're trying to stick to going into this FPL season. If you did enjoy it, give it a like. And of course, like I said earlier on in the video, do subscribe if you haven't already. Let's try and hit 200,000 by Game Week 1, which is only a couple of weeks away now. And lastly, if you've not checked out Fantasy Football Scout, there's a link in the description below. Loads of great tools, loads of members articles and stuff like that. I really would recommend becoming a member. I've been one for many years now, and it really does help when it comes to FPL. So you can pay yearly or monthly, however you want to do it. Link in the description below. I'll leave that video there. I'll be back tomorrow with another one. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.